everyone. I am Britta, the founder of Jasper. Jasper was created out of a personal need for connection and community after losing my dog. His name was Jasper. And I am incredibly excited to be here today and chat with Dr. Sarah Hoggan. She is an emergency vet and an expert in the psychology of pet loss. She's also the incredible woman behind two TEDx talks that address how we think and talk about pet loss grief. What's even more exciting is Dr. Hoggan joined Jasper as our Chief Veterinary Officer, and we're so lucky to have her join the team. We are on a mission to support those navigating pet loss and to build the home for grief. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
So let's start off. Can you tell us when you knew you wanted to devote your life to pets and animals? Was it a calling or just something you felt you had to do?
This was 100% a calling. I always knew I was going to be a doctor. I honestly didn't always know what my patients would look like, though. I thought for the longest time I was going to be a pediatrician. And it's funny because there's really not a lot of difference between the fur babies and the human babies. The person taking care of them has to do the communication on their behalf, has to advocate for them. So that's pretty similar. And I grew up in Idaho where there wasn't a lot of exposure to veterinary medicine outside of spay, neuter, vaccine, and euthanasia. So I didn't really know that there was a whole world of it out there. I thought it was very much those three things, and those three things um, didn't sound very fulfilling long term. So, and then once I got into school, and kind of realized the truth, then it was like, okay, then my path got a lot more clear. And I had actually applied to medical school, and I was on the alternate list 2 years in a row to go to medical school. And when I called and asked for feedback about why, gosh, what am I missing? I was told that I seemed to care too much. I was too soft-hearted, and they didn't think I would be a good doctor for that reason. And which is, in hindsight, now it sounds a little funny, but that sometimes you're just not, when you're meant to be path comes along, it's like you're no longer struggling. All the pieces fall into place. And so I talked with my college advisor, and he's like, You're a fool. You belong in veterinary medicine. Every single thing about you screams vet med." And I said, "God, I just spays, neuters, vaccines, and euthanasia." And he's like, "Oh no," and had me go visit a hospital. And then I applied and got into vet school on my very first try. And just, yeah, meant to be.
I love that. There's always a quote that I come back to that I think one of my friends told me, and I've seen all over social media too. And not that it was rejection, but they say rejection is redirection. And sometimes we need to
Mhm.
just embrace those situations. And it does. I'm very happy that whoever that person was that said you were too kind, which I think doctors could use some folks like you. But no, I think it's such a great redirection to what is truly your calling.
No, I agree. Yeah, it was serendipitous. At the time, it didn't feel like it, but in hindsight, it was absolutely serendipitous.
I'm sure. So what, so I mentioned the TED Talks, and I actually just got a message from one of our members, Heather, who said, "Oh my God, I thought you looked familiar. I love your TED Talk." So people,
Well, I'm flattered. Thank you.
you're a celebrity. What initially inspired you to talk about this so publicly?
So every single time I was at a dinner party or I was sitting on an airplane next to someone and I started talking to them, the first time I'd meet someone and they'd hear what my occupation was, I would always hear a euthanasia story. And like, and it wasn't this, oh yeah, my dog, I lost him a year ago. It was this dramatic, and I don't mean dramatic in a derogatory way. I mean, like a sincerely, like a wound that hadn't healed. And they'd say, oh my God, I have to tell you, I lost my dog 10 years ago. And it was so clear that that grief was not being processed. That was an open wound that they were carrying around. And it made me so sad because it didn't have to be that way. And so I recognized a need and I applied to TED and said, this needs to be discussed. This isn't talked about enough in veterinary medicine. So, you know, let me do it. And one of the things that I learned early on in my veterinary career from a really fabulous professor was he said, one of the most important things that you can do is be a good translator. Medicine is a foreign language. Your job is to translate it appropriately. And that really rang true to me, and I've taken it to heart, and I've done my best to meet that brief and translate not just the medicine, but everything that goes with it.
Yeah. No, people need that. The minute you said the translation part, it reminds me, I mean, I think I shared this story with you. I was so lucky to have my vet, Dr. Shelley. And when I saw specialists, I had to record the conversations and she had to help me translate it because one, you're in your most vulnerable state when you're sometimes
Right.
in the emergency room or with specialists or even your vets and you are thrown all this information, then it's what does this mean? And I think that's the
Oh,
perfect way to think about it. Like you need to translate this out, but also that's why we were connected in this community exists. People deserve the space to grieve. And I love this right now. This is the best. So who's this?
so this is Poppy. She was scratching at my knee and wouldn't take no for an answer. She is a Tijuana street dog rescue.
Love that. So let's keep
I
it
love
moving.
you too.
I think everyone could use a little bit. But yeah, no, you're doing incredible work spreading the word. I mean, this needs to be spoken about. So so lucky and hope that you're going to do some more TED Talks. And I know with this platform, we're really going to hear more from you. So I'm so excited. So I'm going to move on to a little bit of what you just said, but the more difficult topic, but something I know so many of us ruminate, reflect, have regret, euthanasia. So making that final decision is incredibly difficult. I mean, it was a year and a half for me, and I can still feel everything I felt leading up to that. And I did have a couple questions from our members on that specifically. So from Gareth, one of our members, who this is a question and kind of statement I've heard from so many people. So this is specific, but also what everyone feels. How do I cope with the guilt and inner conflict of making the decision to euthanize my pet? As their protector, it feels unbearable to make the decision. How do I cope with the guilt, the doubt, the conflict of wanting my pet to squeeze every moment out of life while also not wanting them to suffer? Do you have any advice or tips for people that are dealing with that lead up or anticipatory grief and just how to make the decision?
I think what needs to be repeated and remind yourself this is that euthanasia is an act of mercy. If this were something simple and fixable, if it were something a week's worth of antibiotics would fix, we would just fix it and we would never look back and we would just move on. Euthanasia is an act of mercy that we are afforded in veterinary medicine. And it is a heavy burden to carry, but it's a heavy burden for veterinarians too, and for the technicians, for the whole team. It's not something we ever do lightly. So understand that even though it really is your decision, a good veterinary team isn't going to do it lightly. So like pretend you had a kitten with like a goopy eye or something like that. And you brought it in and you're like, yeah, I want to put it, I want to euthanize it. You'd be told no at every hospital I've ever worked at because that's so fixable, and they would tell you no. So it's not, you're not as completely alone as you feel. And you can talk to your veterinarian and you can talk to the technicians and you can talk to your family members and say, you know what? I I think it's time. And when I have families that are asking me, how do I know? Like how do I really know? I think that there are a couple kind of barometers that you can use. One is if they're in pain and we can't control the pain. Because I've known humans that I lost that way. And that was a horrible way for them to go. If they are struggling to breathe and we have run out of good interventional options to manage that, end stage congestive heart failure, end stage pulmonary disease, um, pneumonia, that a battle we are losing. So that's another kind of situation to keep in mind. If it isn't something quite that black and white or dramatic, the other thing that I suggest is for people to look at their pet's entire life and look at it in the context of what are the three things that meant the most to them. Whether it was eating, or whether it was running outside, or whether it was, spending time with the family or going on walks and sniffing everything, whatever those three things are. If they are at the point in their life where they cannot do those three things, then I think it's fair to say their quality of life is compromised. Because I know, for me, mine would be if I was no longer able to work, if I was no longer able to engage with the people that I loved, if I was no longer able to be around animals, I would probably be the loneliest person on earth. And the things that gave me joy and passion and filled me with a will to live and a drive would be gone. So look at it in context. And the other thing to keep in mind is it's never, people act like it's a right versus wrong. It's not a binary decision. Whenever you are making a decision and putting your pet's needs above your own, then it's the right decision. And euthanasia is the ultimate act of love because you are taking a situation and you are saying, I know you're not doing well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you peace and I'm going to do something that is going to hurt me deeply for years, probably for the rest of my life. But because I love you enough, I can't bear to see you hurt or feel sick anymore. So I'm going to take all that pain and even more, and I'm going to carry that now. That's altruism. That's the ultimate act of love. And that's why it's an act of mercy.
That that
That makes sense.
oh my God. It just hit so home for me. And I'm just laughing. I'm not laughing. I'm just like, it was so powerful. Um, it kind of explains why it hurts so much because you are taking all that pain away and kind of giving it to yourself by it makes me think of all the times for me that Jasper took my pain away. He took my pain.
Mhm.
He took my sadness. He he took that, and then it was my turn to do that for him. Thank you for putting it that way, because my next question was kind of based on my experience, if that's okay. So I personally ended up letting Jasper transition on what would some would consider a good day, as good as it could be at that time, because he did food was this little boy's number one thing. And when he would not and could not eat, that's when I knew. So yeah, it was an okay, good day. And that was not an easy decision. But I knew he was suffering in my gut. Do you think it's good practice, or does it add regret, or is it just totally individual, like to kind of look at the good day, the bad day, waiting longer, like
Again, I think it's completely individual, and I don't think it's right versus wrong. I think it's, what is your what is your rationale? Are you saying that I want you to have a really good day, so I want this to be like your best day ever, and then I want you to have a soft goodbye at that end of that day, so you just go to sleep happy, and that's the last experience we had together. Or if it's a matter of, you know what, I've been watching you like a little light bulb get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, and I know that our time is really short, and I don't want to, I don't want you to languish. Um, with humans, we make humans languish. Um, I lost my stepdad to uh, an basically an ascending flaccid paralysis. What that means is it started in his legs, and his legs got weaker, and it inched its way up his body. And when it hit his diaphragm, mechanically, he was no longer able to ventilate. He couldn't breathe. And his doctor said to my mom, I can give him some drugs and I can buy him 3 days. But after that, his body's worn out. So we had hospice come in, we had a hospice bed set up, we had double oxygen tanks, and we had Vic in the living room, and we let people that he loved and that we loved know so they could try to come say goodbye. And unfortunately, the drugs didn't work as well as we'd hoped, and he couldn't breathe, and he was this tough old cowboy and wild-eyed with fear because his every cell in his body was screaming for oxygen, nasal cannulas. And it's like, you know what? I really wish I could give you peace, and I can't. And I had to watch him either fight through that fear, or we had to drug him to the point that he wasn't aware of his surroundings. And so it reaffirmed for me that what we do is such a kindness, and I wish we could do it for humans.
I hear you on that. It is a kindness. And what you said about taking the love is going to stick with me forever, because it's been a year and a half for me and I still think about it all the time. And it kind of brings us into another question from one of our community members, Nadine. How do I get past reliving the last 3 minutes of the euthanasia? It's been about a month. Even though I know it was the right decision, he was in so much pain from a low spine compression fracture. I feel like I let him down.
First of all, that's a really hard situation to be in. And I understand what you're saying, because one of the things that our body does to us, our brain does to us, is we try to learn from pain. Pain's an evolutionary teaching mechanism. So like you've heard the bad joke that you only pee on an electric fence once. So because it's painful, it's a teacher. So when you have something that is so painful, that doesn't have an obvious correlation, like I stuck my hand in the fire, I urinated on the electric fence, I picked up a piece of glass, then your body goes, or your brain goes over the last bits of the moments again and again and again on this horrible repeat loop, almost like it starts off in this big of a frame, and then the next time it comes to this big of a frame, and the next time it's this big of a frame, and then the next time it's this big. And it's doing that because it's trying to find the trigger. What can I avoid in the future so I don't have this horrible pain again? And I understand why our brain does that, but I hate that our brain does that. And I think what, I think what you have to do is, I think that it's okay and it's actually helpful to talk out loud about it to him. And I obviously don't know the circumstances, but it sounds like maybe things hadn't gone the way you had hoped. Like if you could have written a script of how it would go, that it didn't follow the script you had hoped for. And so I think that you need to recognize that he knew he was loved. That wasn't ever a question. And you loved him. And I'm sure in your lifetime together, you would probably talk to him, and you would talk to him in ways that were more than just commands. You probably said a whole lot more than sit and stay and food and things like that. So I think it's reasonable to open your heart to recognize that there are things that I can't explain, that I've seen too many times to think they're a coincidence. I've only worked emergency my whole career. This is an aside for 1 second, but it supports what I'm discussing. So that's why I'm making on a tangent. When I was the overnight doctor and I'd have hospitalized patients, you can tell with experience which ones are languishing and not doing well, and which ones are heading towards getting ready to head to the light. And I would call families and I would say, I don't like how he looks. I think you need to get here as fast as you can if you want to say goodbye. And I need to know how long it is going to take you to get here. Give me a realistic ETA. And I would get that. And then I would go over to the pet and I would say, I just talked to your mom. I need you to hold on for 30 more minutes. I promise you they are coming and they want to see you again. I need you to hold on for 30 more minutes. And I did that with cats, and I did that with dogs, and I did that with birds. And more often than not, I would see them hang on until their family got there. And then within a very short period of time, they would pass. So I think there are things that we just can't explain. And I've seen it too many times to think it's a coincidence. So I think that if you are reliving that 3 minutes to stop that reel from playing, I think you need to take your power back and you need to say, you know how much I loved you and I showed you in every way I could every single day. And when I made the decision to give you peace that day, it's because I saw you were hurting and there was nothing more we could do. So I took you there with every intention of a soft goodbye. And they knew what I wanted, and I knew what I wanted, and it just didn't work out as we had hoped. But I want you to know that I wanted you to have peace because you were hurting so bad. And obviously you'll use your own words, but I think you can put all your feelings into your voice and put that out into the universe and let him know, because I can just about guarantee you he forgives you. And I can tell you, like with my own dogs, the other day I was putting away books and my dogs were at my feet, and I dropped a book and I bonked one of them with it, and it was a big book. And I felt like the world's biggest jerk. And, she cried out and then she walked around for a bit and kind of gave me the stink eye. And I was horrified and I had to pick her up and hold her and be like, I'm so sorry. I would never drop a book on you on purpose. And I know that hurt and I'm so sorry. And then, she licked me and then it was okay. So I think that, you know, they have tremendous capacity to forgive. So don't shortchange that. Give them the opportunity to forgive and explain how you would have done it if you wanted to.
I love that. I know I have one other specific member question, but before I get to that too, I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of people out there that make a plan and then it doesn't go as planned. Maybe something happens the night before, the week before, there's an intention to go to the vet. I think validation that that's common. I assume that that
Oh,
happens.
yeah. All the time.
Okay.
All the time. Because, yeah, we have people call and say, oh my God, I had a euthanasia appointment scheduled Monday, but it's Saturday night and he's not doing well. So can I come in on emergency? Yeah, of course you can come in. It's okay. We're here. We'll help. It's okay.
Yeah. Oof. I'm going to get to one more very specific question from Angela. So Angela's dog had to be sedated and they put in the IV. Then the vet brought him to her so her and her family could say goodbye. Herman was walking around in circles, tripping over the IV cord and not responding to her or Lee. And she's been sedated before and understands that she, like you've been sedated and didn't know where you were, who you were, like there's complications there. I'm definitely not an expert on it, but
Right, right.
she feels like she was forced to say goodbye to Herman while he was in the sedated state. Do you think Herman knew they were there? She's lived with this awful feeling since he passed, and she did preface saying, please don't say, of course he did, because she's been sedated many times and didn't have a clue where she was or what was going on. And she felt Herman was panicked, panting heavy. And which this is probably one of the most common things too that you experience, he hated the vet from the time he was a puppy. I mean, Jasper had a great relationship with the pet, but if I was there, I had to drop Jasper off a lot and do a parking lot transfer because if I was there, it was mom, mom, mom. And so many pets don't like the vet. I mean,
Right. No, no, I completely understand.
yeah. And I think
So,
there was no panting or evidence of pain prior to her bringing him in, so it felt like the sedation threw her for a loop.
right.
Yeah.
So the a couple different things. One is I'm not sure what drug that was used, but certain drugs do have panting as a significant side effect, like hydromorphone is a common one that can cause panting as a side effect. So part of it may have been that it was a drug side effect just from the drug. The other thing we can see is there is what's called, when you learn about anesthesia, they talk about an excitement phase. So if you're trying to anesthetize an animal, make them asleep enough that they're not aware of their surroundings. If you don't give them enough, there's like levels. So the first level is you're completely normal. The next level is the excitement phase. The next level is the actual sedation. You don't want them in the excitement phase because that's where the drug is causing them to basically just go into kind of fight or flight mode, for lack of a better term, and it's not useful. So you try to dose it higher, or you try to make a drug cocktail. So so you get that I'm awake and I'm okay, and then gosh, I'm sedated and I'm asleep. So it sounds like potentially there was either some side effects of the drug that caused panting, or we may have been in the excitement phase from the medication. And I think this is one of those scenarios where you know how you wanted it to go and how you wanted it to look, and it didn't go that way. And if you're worried that he, you know, didn't know that you were there, you know, can I tell you for sure that he did? In all sincerity, can I tell you for sure that he knew you were there? I can't, because it doesn't sound like his brain was operating ideally. However, do I think that he probably had a lifetime of love and support? And do I think that he knew you were there up until the point where he got sedated? And do I think he had a strong level of trust with you and knew, like, he wasn't afraid of you? He didn't think, oh my goodness, they have, ill intent. So I think that this was a situation where it sounds like maybe things could have been done a bit differently and could have gone maybe a little bit smoother. But I think that you need to give yourself some grace, because you were operating with the best information you had at the time. You brought him to a place that you trusted, that had probably cared for him before, or was it, a veteran, was a veterinarian. You brought him to a good place to have something that was a kindness done. And even though it didn't turn out exactly as you had hoped, he had a lifetime with you to know you and trust you and love you. And I think this is another one of those situations where just talk to him and tell him everything you need to tell him. And I can't explain why this helps, but you can't just talk in your brain. It can't be silent. It has to be out loud. And put yourself in a place where you are 100% private and don't feel weird in any way. And it can be in a room in your house, it can be inside your car, it can be anywhere you want where you feel like you have privacy and you can completely let your guard down and open your heart and say, you know what? I'm really not okay with how that went. And I need you to know that I'm not okay with that, because that wasn't what I wanted and that wasn't what I planned. And I'm righteously indignant for both of us. And and I need you to be at peace, and I need you to know how much you're loved, and I need you to know what a huge part of my life you are, and you live on in my thoughts every single day, and you are going to be a family legend. And every Christmas when we get together, we're going to recall the time that you tore open your present and two of the kids' presents because I stupidly wrapped up chocolate, or whatever dog story you have. And you know, and that helps. Saying it out loud helps. It's like it puts it in the universe, and and it makes it real. And I wish could explain the physiology or show you on a textbook where it proves it. And I can't, but I can just tell you from personal experience, it makes a difference.
I can too. I talk to this guy all the time, all the time. It took me a couple months. I think I did a little bit, then it was really hard. And now I mean, I was so used to talking to him in my apartment and I live alone, and I started doing it again, pretending he's here. And I feel he's here. And it does, saying it out loud, saying it in your head, yeah, writing it down, yeah. But there's something so different about saying it out loud and getting it out. I've done it in my car a lot because you're in your car alone. Jasper used to be my little passenger prince, I called him, and I'll go on road trips now and talk to him about what's going on. A lot of times I've apologized to him about what a lot of members express. I lost eye contact with him right before because I turned to speak to the vet and look back, and I regret that so deeply. But I've tried to eventually reframe it to he was probably straining to keep his eyes open, looking in mommy's eyes. And the minute I broke it, he was like, okay, I can rest now. But it took me a year to get there, a full year. So, I know a lot of members of our community, we've talked about the talking out loud, and it is so cathartic and helpful. And I think what you said too about you really need to think about the sum of the lifetime. The last couple months, the last weeks, last days are not the sum of the entire relationship, no matter how long or short it was. And I think I've shared this before, but something that helped me, it's such a small, silly thing, but it really did help me, was I made an album of all Jasper photos and videos and I reversed the order. So it's not chronological based on the most recent. It's some of the oldest photos and videos when he didn't have arthritis and was running around, crazy guy, and was jumping up and down. And it, I can't not smile thinking of it because seeing those last few weeks like that, it's, having those be the recent memories because you scroll on your phone. It got to a point where I was like, these are not his best years. This is not his best days. This is when he was suffering. And while that is part of his story, there are so many years of goodness, so many years of happiness and love. And I think what you said about trust too is so powerful. They trust us, and we do make the best decisions we can with the information and resources we have at the time. And it's not always a perfect story, and things don't go as planned. But we have to remember that they trusted us and we did our best. And then it's powerful to talk out loud. And anyone that's watching this, I highly encourage it because I do the same always.
Yeah. Well, and you know, the what I want you to kind of consider when to reframe it a little bit in your mind is if you think about people who accomplish pretty spectacular things in their life, like, for example, Dr. Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi or anyone who was a martyr for a cause. When you think about Dr. Martin Luther King, you think about his speeches, you think about how he changed society, you think about how he stood for some of the best things humanity has to offer. And he was assassinated, and oh my God, that's a tragedy and how unfair. But how he died doesn't shine brighter than his legacy of love and accomplishment. And I want you to remember all of the good things and don't let those last 3 minutes shine brighter than every other part of his life, because he was so much more in your life than 3 minutes.
That, I'm obsessed with that. Just got a couple other member questions, so I'm going to flip to them. And so from Susan, I lost my 15-year-old dog Snoopy through euthanasia almost a year ago. He was my very best friend, and I'm still grieving. I adopted a cat, Gracie, 2 months ago, and I think it was to fill a void. And I'm having trouble bonding with her. I do love her very much, and she's definitely bonding to me. So I wonder if I've done something selfish by adopting her because I find myself comparing her to my dog. Is this common?
It is. Thank you, Tippy. Oh, sorry, you can't see it. You can't see my feet, but I've got about five of my pack running around demanding attention. So I'm trying to
We're gonna need a photo.
five of the 12. So if you're like, wow, how big's your pack?
12.
Yes, I have 12 dogs and 3 cats. um, so I think that this is another subject that needs to be discussed. And this is something I had put in for as a third TED Talk that is currently on hold. But what matters is the information is out there. It doesn't matter how it's packaged. So what I want you to recognize is it's incredibly common for people to say, I lost this pet and now I'm worried that, like, I feel like I'm cheating on them by loving another animal, or I feel like I was selfish when I rescued them and added them to my life because I'm still grieving, or how long do I need to wait before I get another pet from the one that I had before. I want you to understand that when you lose your pet, their body is gone, but love doesn't die. Love is forever. And that's really critically important to understand, because what you do with it is why it's so hard, because it's like it has this own identity and you're like, well, gosh, I loved Snoopy and now I have this cat, but I still have this love for Snoopy. So the best analogy I can make for people is, what you need to remind yourself is you are building a love library in your heart. And Snoopy was one book in your library, a magnificent book, an incredible book, and a book that you will reference throughout your lifetime for the rest of your lifetime. And you had Snoopy and you treasured him like no other. And now, unfortunately, his physical presence is gone from your life, but his love is still present. So that's what goes in your love library. So you take your love for Snoopy and you're not getting rid of it. You're putting it on the bookshelf in your heart. And it's a placeholder. And it's going to hold that place because it has a place in your heart, and that's where it's going to stay forever. And you are writing or reading, developing your new book with your kitty. And those two can sit side by side on your love library. And as you have more animals in your lifetime, your library just gets bigger. And every single person you loved, whether it's a fur person or a human person, has a spot in your library. And some are going to be bigger books, and some are going to be thinner books, and some are going to be books that you read all the time, and some are going to be books that you only pick up when you're going through a photo album and then you see a picture and you're transported back to that moment. And so, God, do you remember that little black and white kitten we found? So you're building a love library. That's Snoopy's book. And so, and you can do physical manifestation if it helps, just like we do baby books for our kids, because we want to hold on to that part of their life, but inevitably they grow up. So if you want to make a puppy book or a life book, go ahead. You can have a physical manifestation. If you don't need that and just holding a spot in your heart is good, that's okay too. This isn't a right or wrong. Whatever feels right to you is the right answer. And allow yourself to love again. You're not cheating on him. You're not, because you were devoted to him throughout his lifetime. And now he has a place in your heart, and he's a legacy in your life. And you have this incredible kitty that you've saved. And I imagine if you could talk to the cat. I mean, like actually have a thoughtful communication where ideas are shared. You know, what the cat's opinion is probably feels like he won the lottery. Oh my God, this incredible person saved me. And how lucky am I to have this person? And she loves me and it's great. And sometimes she's sad and she talks about Snoopy, but I still make biscuits for her and I still headbutt her and, do do all the things. So just the animal that you saved, all they know is their reality that they were living, where they came from somewhere that maybe was okay, or maybe it was terrible, depending on their circumstances. And now they are learning that they can love and they can trust, and you're going to give them food and kindness and soft words. And you're going to trust them enough to curl up and sleep with them. When you're at your most vulnerable, you're letting them be close and feel your heartbeat and share your warmth. So that's a pretty spectacular thing to share with another living creature, especially since humans are fragile. Our teeth are worthless. Unless we're attacking an apple, we're not going to do much damage on anything. Our claws, frivolous. Humans are fragile beings. We don't stand a chance defending ourselves against a authentically pissed off dog or cat. So sharing our space with them when we're our most vulnerable, that's a huge sign of trust. And they know that. And they appreciate that.
What a perfect way to think of it, is this love library. I still haven't been ready in a lot. I will say I am Susan, I feel you. That is exactly what's prevented me so far. There's a couple reasons, but I was scared of resentment. I had a lot of fear. But right before we went live, I told Sarah, I was like, I think I'm ready. I think I'm getting there. And I know I'm never going to fully feel ready. And I love this mentality of it's another book. It's another story. And I'm going to get to tell whoever I adopt all about Jasper and pass some of the love Jasper gave me to this new relationship, but it will be different. There's no replacing a single pet. There is no changing that love and the experience we shared with them. I have one more question that came in. It's a little bit about dreams, which when I started to read it, and I've had some very strange dreams with Jasper in them, but this is from Sienna. So her dog Max passed away. And she's had some dreams where she's come back home with the ashes and Max is waiting inside the door, or that he's still around. I know for me, I had dreams that Jasper was still here, or that I forgot to give him medicine and all this stuff happened. So I've had crazy dreams. I've woken up and been in a lot of distress. She's wondering if Max is telling her that she let him go too soon, or she's just worrying. Having these dreams, it makes you worried. Any
Right.
insight into how we can reframe, rethink, do these dreams pass, or is this just is this common? Is this something a lot of people experience? I know I have, but
Right. I think it's probably more common than people realize. And I think it's one of those things that is hard to talk about because, like, if I went to work and I was like, like it's one time if you're like, oh, I had the dumbest dream. I showed up to work with no pants on. Everybody will have a chuckle about that because everybody has that dream. But nobody, like, never in your lifetime do you authentically forget to put pants on and drive all the way to work, and have that happen. So I think that it's something that's hard to talk about when you're really sincerely seeking answers. But I think it's part of the grief process. And I think it's part of wish fulfillment. I wish I could see him again. I wish he was still here. And a part of you subconsciously is like, well, really, he is still here because, you know, everything associated with him is basically a physical memory trigger. Here's his food bowl. Here's the bed that he laid on. You're going to pick out a shirt out of your closet that you haven't worn in a couple months, and it's going to be covered in his fur. And there's a huge physical reminder. So I think that part of it is it's recognizing to an extent he is still there because there are physical triggers around the house that confirm and validate his presence. And part of it's wish fulfillment. You just, how nice would it be to walk through the front door and there he is again? Hey, mom, you were gone for so long, 45 minutes. What was I going to do with myself? Oh my God. And the other thing is when grief is really powerful, hallucinations are not uncommon where you know and it's not like you're sitting there watching TV and all of a sudden that they manifest on the TV or something like that. But do you know how many people have like lost a loved one and then they'll be in a crowd and they'd swear that they saw that person that they lost, and sometimes they even run up to someone and turn them around and go, oh my God. And then it's like, oh, sorry, I thought you were the person that I lost. I had a cat that we lost at our old house named Weasley, and he had this funny way of laying down. Like most cats, circle and are really delicate or make biscuits. And he would walk into a room and just flump, just splat right over every single time. And I thought that was the funniest thing. And I was driving to dinner one night to meet my friends, and it was twilight, so the light was just kind of odd. And I would swear to you, I saw a black cat walking on the sidewalk and he went flump and fell over. And I was on a 45-mile-per-hour road. I slammed on the brakes. I peeled out, turned back around, and probably drove back and forth over that half-mile stretch 10 times and got out of the car and called for him and it, can I prove to you it wasn't him? No. Do I think I probably hallucinated? Yeah, I think I probably did. Because it hurt so bad to lose him where he managed to get out the door because we had construction workers there and I just never got to see him again. I got no closure. I don't know what happened to him. My brain goes to every terrible scenario. I called every veterinary hospital in town. I did all the things that you do. Nope. And so my brain decided it was going to let me see him one more time, and I knew it was him because of his telltale flop. So I think that makes you normal.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay. And if, you know, maybe if he is trying to tell you something, maybe he's just telling you, I would really like to see you again too. And I loved it when you'd come home and I got to wait for you by the front door. That was my favorite time.
That's beautiful. I know a lot of people experience hearing like the tapping. I've heard it. I swear I've heard the bark, Jasper's bark. I've heard his little footprints. Um,
The music from his tags on his collar.
gosh, yeah. Just any like so many things. And one time I swear I felt him on my bed. And it was when I moved into this place and it was when I really needed him. And I swear I felt him by my feet. And it was really,
And
yeah, to be in a place
yeah,
where I say, yeah, I'm gonna embrace this and just like love this moment, not let it scare me, just and choose to believe what I want to believe. That he was telling me, like, I know you moved and I've never been to this place, but I'm still around. I'm still here. I'm watching you.
well, and I can't again, stories I can't, experiences I should say I can't prove. But I worked at a specialty hospital for over 20 years, and we had um, a, a, a dog ghost. We called him Cheerio. Uh, he was a Great Pyrenees that came in for euthanasia one night, and um, when we were combing him, we found Cheerios stuck in his fur, and his dad said, "Oh God, the kids were feeding him Cheerios, the Honey Nut Cheerios. That was his favorite treat." And we sent him to heaven. And about 3 weeks later, in the middle of the night, we heard the doorbell go off, and I looked up on the security camera, and the technician and I that were on both saw a giant, big, white, fluffy dog. And then she went up to check him in, and there was no big white fluffy dog up there. And other people that worked overnight had seen a giant big white fluffy dog on security cameras. And every once in a while, the scale would go, like if we had a dog that was getting ready to pass, it seemed like we would see the scale sometimes go up to like 89 pounds with nothing on it and then go away. And we would see other dogs in the hospital staring at something that we could never see. And, you know, Great Pyrenees are, shepherd dogs. They watch over a flock, they guide the sheep to the right place. Maybe that was maybe that was his job. He was going to guide those that couldn't find their own way onto the right path to Rainbow Bridge. I don't know. I can't prove it. I don't need to prove it. It makes perfect sense to me. So I accept it.
No, I think something that I've learned in this grief process, and around the same time Jasper passed, one of my best friends lost her dad. And we had a conversation once that always stuck with me because I think, as we all know, like you were saying earlier, you feel embarrassed or ashamed to say things out loud that you're thinking or experiencing, or like saying the dreams, you feel crazy. And my friend Alicia and I were talking, and neither one of us have been super religious, but we both admitted that this grief and loss allowed us to kind of rediscover and decide what we wanted to believe in. And it was different than what I thought I believed in months prior. And it should be embraced. It should be celebrated that we can change our minds. We can rethink how we want to believe anything. It wasn't something I gave as much thought to before, but it gives me comfort to believe Jasper's presence and energy is still around me. And it gives me so much comfort to talk to him out loud. And that is my journey and my path. And it's beautiful. And it's something that I do encourage people to embrace. You can't explain it all. There's not a scientific answer for everything. And there's not a right, wrong, or real answer to everything. There's just things that happen, beliefs we have, things we choose to want to believe in and embrace. And I think it's such a beautiful perspective you've given, and just such a great thing for us all to take from these tragedies, an opportunity to rethink and find new meaning, find new ways to process and believe and live our lives.
Well, and if you're someone who is religious or spiritual or whatever, it's nobody else's business. You get to think and feel whatever, whatever you want, and nobody else has to know about it, and nobody else gets a vote, and it's okay. And you know, And if you want to talk about it, just find people that have had similar experiences. Find a safe audience and talk about it. Because I can tell you that there were, multiple technicians that I worked with that saw Cheerio, and they were there that night that we sent him to the heaven. And, I wasn't the only one that had experienced it. And that's okay. And there were some people that never experienced it. And there are some people who are like, you guys are crazy. Okay, no problem. Cheerio probably doesn't like you very much. So I don't think you're going to get to see him. So I'm just,
Yeah.
you know what? Nobody else gets a vote. And please, please, please don't ever treat yourself badly with the word should. I should have. We should have. This should have. Should has no beneficial place in your life. It is a word that is a shaming word, and it is a stick that we hit ourselves in the face with, and I don't know why. And it is a habit that we all do. And when you do it, what it means is you're a highly intelligent person who sets high standards for yourself, and you are used to being successful. So you are measuring the situation against your normal standard, and it's not measuring up. That's okay. You're never, ever going to be perfect. And I can guarantee you that if we all had the ability to share our flaws and wear them on the outside, you would see that your flaws are probably smaller than most people's. It's okay to wish things had gone better. It's okay to have circumstances beyond your control that didn't go the way that you had hoped or planned or did your best to make happen. But you don't have to abuse yourself with the word should over them. So take whatever your should stick is and break it and throw it away. Or the other thing you can do, and I've done this before with something that's really bugging me, is I get a nice rock that's a decent sized and I get a Sharpie and I write down what happened on the rock, whether it was, um, you know, I said something hurtful to someone when I really didn't mean to. In that moment, I wasn't strong enough to hold my tongue, or I made a mistake, or I messed something up and felt like, God, what a jerk that makes me. And I have written it on a rock. And then I have either gone to the ocean or a lake or somewhere, and I have said, you know what? I'm sick of carrying this around. And I talk to myself and say, you know what? That was an error. You owned it was an error. But here's the really important thing. You wouldn't be horrified by that if you hadn't grown from it. Because if you hadn't grown from it, you'd say, everybody else is wrong. I was clearly right in that circumstance. When you wish something had done differently, it means that you grew and it means that you're a bigger and a better person for it. And then you can give that rock to the ocean or to the lake or to the river, or you can bury it somewhere because you don't need to carry it around anymore.
I love that. I have a couple rocks I think I need to throw in the ocean again, so I will be doing that. Okay. I know we are over, and I think we are gonna need to do part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's no questions, guys, but I'm gonna ask a couple more and then we'll wrap up, and Sarah will be in the community. There are more events to come, so don't worry, everyone. But what do you think, if you could pick one misconception about pet loss grief for everyone to retire and get rid of, is there something that you would love to see go away?
Just that it's not real grief. It's 100% valid. And it has it has a place, and it has an important place. And there is zero shame associated with grieving. And I'm and I feel like people a lot of times think that, okay, well, our relationship with animals has evolved now, and it's different now, and now we're allowed to grieve animals. You know, I spent some time in Europe when I was in high school, and and at all the military museums that we went to, and there's a lot in over in Scotland and England, there were cemeteries for the officers' dogs. That was 1600s, 1700s. Even here, we just moved up to the mountains in Northern California. And when you're driving up the road to our town, there is a monument on the side of the road with an old wagon wheel. And we pulled over, and it's from like during the gold rush time. And there was a stagecoach that was carrying gold, and a criminal tried to hold up the stagecoach, and the stagecoach driver refused to give him the gold. So the criminal murdered the horse named Old Joe. And the community was so devastated by the utter cowardice of this criminal shooting the horse who was just doing his job pulling the wagon. They buried him on the spot, and they built a monument to Old Joe, and they put one of the wagon wheels there to commemorate it. So that's animals have been held in high esteem and grieved and lost for centuries. So this isn't a new thing. It's a very old thing, and it's a very old thing that's very valid. And we are now getting back to the way that we can celebrate these lives and manifest this in meaningful ways. So it's just, the grief is real, the grief is valid, and nobody gets to tell you otherwise. And if they try to tell you otherwise, just recognize how not helpful they are. And you don't have to share your time or your space with them anymore. And if there's someone who's close in your life, I'm not saying that person's a jerk. There are a lot of people who just don't understand. So you can be a good person and not understand something and think you're being helpful and say something that's very much not helpful. And if that's the circumstance, then what you can do is you can just say, okay, point noted, you're not the person I'm going to discuss this with anymore. And then find someone who gets you. If you needed to talk to me about pet loss grief, makes perfect sense to me. I'm never going to tell you that, oh gosh, it was just a goldfish. It was someone that mattered to you. You lost a someone. You didn't lose a thing you replace. You run out of paper towels. You go to the grocery store, you buy more paper towels. You do not bury the roll that the paper towels had because those were your favorite paper towels. They are just paper towels. That's a thing. Losing a living being is a someone, whether they spoke the same language in the same way or not.
So true. And that's why this community exists, because sadly, not everyone gets it. And I feel bad for someone that didn't get to share the kind of love that I got to share with Jasper in my lifetime. But I also know it's painful deep in that grief to try to explain or rationalize to someone like why you're feeling a certain way, and finding a community of people to connect with that are going through the same thing. Or one of the things I love about our support groups is when someone shares, I either see a bunch of heads nodding or people go in the chat and say, "Oh my gosh, me too." And it's usually those things that we feel shamed or we feel isolated. We feel like, like Sienna, so props to you for bringing up the dream thing because I guarantee you at least half the people watching this have had similar dreams and wondered about them, but maybe didn't say them out loud. Everything that everyone shares, you're not just you're not just impacting yourself by saying it out loud, but you're also validating what so many other people go through and validating that this is difficult and tough and messy. And some people won't get it, but think about, I mean, I love hearing that poor horse, but what a beautiful thing that the community came together and acknowledged the loss and put up the memorial. And people, I hope that we can help change more people feeling comfortable saying it out loud. Because I think the more people will get comfortable, not feel so isolated, not feel so unique in their grief. We're gonna have to do a part two very soon, but I will ask one last question before we wrap up, and I appreciate everyone knowing that we're running it at time, but I'm gonna squeeze this one last thing in. Can you name one of the most under-acknowledged parts about the grieving process? Like, what is something that people don't give credit to that you think should be acknowledged more?
So I think that there are two things that are poorly understood that really need to be illuminated. I think the first thing is that, do you know what the most addictive substance is known to humankind? It's hope. The term "a glimmer of hope." Do you know how many situations where people hold on to that glimmer? Glimmer is intentionally meant to be just the tiniest bit, and they hold on to that hope, and they'll ask and say, okay, is there still hope? Is even a glimmer of hope? And you say yes, and you see them, okay, there's hope. And you keep holding on to that, even though it's a sliver of volume and it sustains you. And then when you actually lose your pet, when they are gone and they are not coming back, suddenly that substance that you had been living for and living on is completely and utterly gone. And you don't have any way to get it. None. And so what you had been living for and living on and counting on and building a future upon is just gone. And that is isolating and crushing and so hard. And then the terrible partner to that is grief. And grief is the most powerful paralytic substance on the planet. Look at the Taj Mahal. That was built by a husband for his wife because he adored her and she was so beautiful. And it's white. And it was supposed to have a companion building built that would be black, and that would be the monument to the husband. Taj Mahal was completed and he died. And there is no counterpart. All the money, all the labor, all the plans in the world were there. And nothing ever happened because grief is so paralyzing. And you need to give yourself some grace. You cannot overcome what it feels like when you lose hope, when you have been hanging on it, when it has kept you going for hours and days and weeks. And then when that's gone and the grief crushes you and isolates you, you have to give yourself some grace and know that it's okay. Yes, you are going to be paralyzed for a period of time because that makes you normal. And that's what I think are the two things that people need to know because they're not talked about. Hope is addictive and grief is paralytic.
That gave me the chills. I've never thought about the aspect of hope and how it just disappears one day. And then you're met with what for most of us will be the hardest experience of our lives, that loss, the loss of purpose, routine, the grief. I mean, paralyzing is the perfect way to describe it. I didn't know that story about the Taj Mahal. Sarah, thank you so much for this conversation. I am so incredibly honored that you've joined Jasper as our CVO to have you help us create the home for grief and hopefully change how the world views pet loss grief. Everyone that's a part of this community and on this call right now, I also just want to say you all have so much strength because just taking that step to acknowledge the grief and acknowledge and raise your hand saying, I need support, I need help, I need people to talk to, I need to ask questions that have maybe been burning inside of a lot of us for months, for years. Having a space to ask those, it's incredible and it's a privilege. So thank you, Sarah, for giving us that space and for being here tonight and being a part of this group. I can't wait to see what we do together as a community. Everyone here is part of that. And every question that was asked tonight, I hope everyone knows that you having the courage to ask the question, you're asking something that probably a lot of other people have been thinking. So you broke the ice. So I think people should be proud of themselves for putting themselves out there. I know it's difficult, but thank you. Thank you all for being here. I hope after this conversation, you leave feeling just a little bit lighter and a little bit more validated in your grief and what you're going through. And as Sarah said perfectly, give yourself some grace. We all should. Something I try to do, and it's a good reminder because I do know we're all very hard on ourselves, but you would not be here listening to this conversation if you didn't share a deep amount of love and care for your animals and their family. They'll always be a part of our lives and a nice little story in our love library. A book, not a story, much more than a book with lots of chapters. I might need to go make a little book now. So I need to do that.
I hope this is the first of many conversations
It will be.
that we have. And what I want people to take away from this is, first of all, you're not alone. Second of all, you are seen, you are understood, and your feelings are valid. And the other thing I want you to know is if you have a question for me, please ask. There are no dumb questions, but there are answers that make you feel stupid. And if you ever have that experience, what that tells you is the person that you're talking to isn't very good at teaching. I will never make you feel that. There aren't dumb questions. Recognize that I work with dog poop for a living. Very approachable. It's okay. And, you know, I want to help because I get it.
If you guys are thinking it, someone else is thinking it, but I agree. And it's just like we said with talking out loud, just saying something out loud, getting it off your chest, out of your body. It's so powerful. Think about all the times you've held something in, and then when you've just brought it up or said it out loud, that relief that you feel, that release of tension, or it's it's like procrastination. You procrastinate so long and then you feel good when you get it done. It's the same with these things inside our head. We got to get it out. I know I feel so much better when I do it, but thank you for being so approachable, dog poop or not. The empathy and understanding radiates through the Zoom. But I know members of the community are so excited to connect. So we will be doing more sessions. The community's open. And Sarah's on the marketplace if people want to book a one-on-one session. I know schedules are tight and slots keep filling up, but she will keep adding slots. And you're gonna have to take some more photos of your pack to share with the group because I need to see more pictures.
Yeah, hi baby. This is Pippi. She was an abuse case that she was kept inside of a cage inside of a closet because family wasn't supposed to have dogs.
Well,
So now she lives with 12 other dogs on an acreage.
love it. Love it. Thank you again. Thank you everyone for being here. I am so honored you all joined tonight. And for those watching on demand, whenever you watch this, thank you for taking the time. I hope to see everyone in the community in a support group or on another live stream soon, but depending on where you're at in the world, because I know we have folks all over, I hope you have a good night, good afternoon, or a good morning. But thank you guys all for being here, and we will talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Hi, everybody.